Today, I will be delivering a lecture on drawing and description of limb bones, particularly bones of upper limb. So, at the outset, let us try to know why do we need to draw and describe human bones in physical anthropology practicals. You see, human beings possesses a number of bones, and we need to know where these bones are exactly located and what are its anatomical function and how they look like and how they are oriented in our human skeleton. So in order to know all these facts, what happened? We have to know the drawing and description of the bones. So I will be at the same time demonstrating you how the drawings are to be made. So first of all, before starting drawing, let us try to understand or see what are the basic requirements for drawing bones. So as you know, you will definitely require a pencil, a rubber for erasing, then a drawing sheet and a ruler. So first of all, you take a drawing sheet of appropriate size, which will exactly match the size of the notebook. After taking the drawing sheet, what you have to do is draw a border line with a fine, well-sharpened pencil. Then thereafter, just below the border line, on the top right-hand corner, write down the date. Then in the middle, below the border line, you write down the name of the bone which is to be drawn by you. Then you have to virtually divide the page into different sections where you have to draw the different views of the bone. Say as for example, if you want to draw 4 views of the bone, say anterior view, posterior view, lateral view, medial view, then you have to divide the page virtually into 4 longitudinal areas. Then you have to start drawing. So the drawing should be a freehand drawing. However, when I say freehand drawing, the drawing should be proportionate to the size of the bone. It should not be over large or too large, which doesn't correspond to the size of the bone, or too lengthy, again, which doesn't correspond to the length of the bone. And wherever necessary, you can make slight shading, because slight shading may be required to represent certain anatomical features of the bone, such as a facet, maybe a fossa, maybe a tubercle, maybe a foramen, maybe a tuberosity, maybe a crest. Then after shading, below each of the drawing, you have to write down the view that you have drawn. Say as for example, anterior view, if it represents anterior view. Likewise, lateral view, medial view, like that. And at the left hand bottom corner, just above the border line, you have to keep a space for teacher's signature and teacher's remark. So this is the fundamental and the basic thing you have to keep in your mind for drawing a bone on your drawing sheet or on the page of your notebook. Well, after completion of drawing, you should not forget to label each and every important features of the bone. So while labeling, you should keep in your mind that you should use dotted line. not a solid line, because solid line may often be confused as a part of the bone. So in most of the drawing we find solid lines, but that is not a proper system. Well, as you have come to know how to draw a bone, now let us start with description of the bone of upper limb. First of all, let us start with humerus, the bone of upper arm. Well, this articulated single humerus of human being. This humerus is an endoskeleton because it is found underneath the tissue, underneath the skin of our body. So, type of skeleton is endoskeleton. Now, coming to what part of the skeleton? I am sure you are aware human skeleton has two important parts. One is appendicular part of the skeleton and the other is axial part of the skeleton. When we say axial part of the skeleton, it simply means all those bones which forms the axis of the body. When we say axis of the body, you see skull, all these ribs, then sternum and your vertebral column constitute axial skeleton. And on the other hand, the bones of girdles, pectoral girdle, pelvic girdle, bones of arms, hand, bones of legs and foot constitute what you call appendicular bone. Therefore, this is the bone of upper arm. That means this is an appendicular bone. So, part of skeleton is appendicular part. Now, just looking from its shape and size, it is having two extremities or two ends, one end upper end here and another lower end here, and connected by a long somewhat tubular structure bone called shaft. So two extremities and a shaft. So such a bone having two extremities and a shaft is classed as long bone. So type of bone is long bone. Well, let us start describing part by part. You see, this is upper extremity. Let me start from upper extremity. Upper extremity consists of a head, hemispherical, not perfectly spherical, hemispherical, half of a sphere. And just at the circumference of this head, there is slight constriction. You see, there is slight constriction here. This constriction is what we call anatomical neck. And just on the opposite side of the head, we have a tuberosity, and this is called greater tuberosity. And just in front of the head, there is again a smaller tuberosity, and this is called lesser tuberosity. And in between these two tuberosity, there is a group. You see a depression here, a group, and this group we call it bicipital group. And actually this anatomical neck forms an obtuse angle with the shaft. If you just extend it and do like this, you see, extend it, do like this, you get an angle. This is obtuse angle. So now, just below this greater and lesser tuberosity, this part is called surgical neck. So this forms your upper extremity. Now let us take off the shaft. Shaft is that part of the bone which is between upper extremity or upper end and lower extremity or lower end. So this part is the shaft of this humerus bone. Well, the upper part of the shaft is somewhat cylindrical, whereas the lower part is prismatic. This is prismatic and the upper part is somewhat cylindrical. Well, this humerus, the shaft of humerus, it has three borders. This is a ridge here, running ridge here. This ridge is the anterior border, which starts from the front of your greater tuberosity and continues. This is your anterior border. And on the side, just from the back side of greater tuberosity, there is another ridge which connects with the external condyle. This is your external border, or you can also say it as lateral border. And on the other side, which starts from this lesser tuberosity, there is again another ridge, and it continues and it joins with the internal condyle or medial condyle. This is your medial or internal border. So therefore, what happened? Here is your anterior border. So anterior border, and this is your exterior or lateral border. So the surface between these two, this is what we call as antero-lateral surface, and this is antero-medial surface. And on the back side, between this medial border and lateral border, on the back side we have posterior surface. So that means we have three surfaces and three border. This very prominent tuberosity. This is called deltoid tuberosity, which is just little bit above the middle of the shaft. This is on the lateral side. You see, this is the medial side. Head faces medially. You see here, head faces medially and little bit posterior, backward and upward. Well, we have described the shaft. Let us come to the lower end or lower extremity. You see, lower extremity is Antero-Posteriorly flattened. You see, this is the anterior surface as I told you, and this is the posterior surface. So this lower end is flattened from anterior view and posterior view. So that is why lower extremity is Antero-Posteriorly flattened. Now you see, this lower end has articulatory part and disarticulatory part. This capitulum, which articulates with the fovea capitaly of radius. You see, this is radius and this is fovea capitaly. So this fovea capitaly articulates with this capitulum, and this is trochlea, a pulley-shaped structure which articulates with the articular surface of Olecranon process of ulna. This part is called Olecranon process, and underneath it, this is the articulatory surface of Olecranon process. So this articular surface of Olecranon process articulates with this trochlea. So these two, capitulum and trochlea, are the articulatory part of lower end of humerus, whereas this lateral epicondyle and medial epicondyle, medial means towards the body, lateral means away or to the side of the body. These are two disarticulatory part of the lower end of humerus. Well, you see here, you can see one fossa. This is called Coronoid fossa. Just to receive the coronoid process of ulna in a flex position. So this is coronoid process of ulna. So just to receive this coronoid process, there is a depression fossa. This is coronoid fossa. Let us see how it receives. See, in the flex position, see. This smaller fossa is radial fossa, and this larger fossa is coronoid fossa. Coronoid fossa receives the coronoid process of ulna, and radial fossa receives the radial head. Well, on the back side, on the posterior side, there is a big fossa. This is Olecranon fossa. So this part is to receive this Olecranon process. Now we have completed description of humerus bone. Let us come to identification of site. That means whether the given bone is left humerus or right humerus. You see, as I told you, this is head. So the first and foremost point you should remember is that this head should face medially towards the body. So when you keep it like this, it is facing towards the body. When you keep it like this, it is facing away from the body. So this should face medially towards the body. This is one point you should keep in your mind, the first point. Then second point is this trochlea should face forward, should be anterior. From the points I have mentioned, you can very easily identify that this femur of human being belongs to left side of upper extremity, or it is the humerus of left upper arm. Let us take up the second bone of upper extremity. This is radius. As you know, this is a bone, so it belongs to endoskeleton. Then part of skeleton, appendicular skeleton, because it's a limb bone. Then on the basis of its size, it is a long bone, as it has two extremity or two epiphyses and a shaft or diaphysis. So this is a long bone. So type of bone is long, type of skeleton is endoskeleton, part of skeleton is appendicular part. Now let us go to the systematic description of this bone. Let us start with upper extremity. So this rounded or circular or cylindrical in cross section, this is called head of radius. And there is slight depression. This is called Fovea capitaly. This is meant for articulation with the bone of humerus. And just below the head there is a constriction. You see, there is a constriction. This is the constriction. See, this is called neck. Below the neck there is a tuberosity. This tuberosity is called radial tuberosity. So this radial tuberosity is located medially. So this is upper extremity. Now let us come down to shaft. So in anatomical position, this radial tuberosity faces medially towards the body, and this whole bone radius is the outer bone of forearm. See the skeleton. See the skeleton. These two bones, this is radius, this is ulna. So this radial tuberosity, it faces towards the middle of the body, that means medially. So on this bone there is a sharp ridge here. This is called anterosseous crest, and this anterosseous crest represents the medial border. So this shaft will be having three borders. This is medial border. Here there is another border in front. This is anterior border, and on the back side posteriorly there is another border. This is posterior border. So then we have now three surfaces: anterior surface, then lateral surface, and posterior surface. Now let us come down to the lower end or lower extremity of radius bone. This is the lower end. So lower end is little bit flattened, compressed from anterior towards posterior. So antero-posteriorly little bit flattened. This lower end has 5 surfaces: the anterior surface, the medial surface, the posterior surface, the lateral surface, and inferior surface, which is the articulatory surface. And there is slight projection downward. This is called styloid process. So this articular surface of inferior surface articulates with scaphoid and lunate bone of ridge, and the medial surface of lower end, this articular surface which represents the medial surface articulates with ulna. So we have given the description of radius. Now let us come to the site identification of radius bone. So just to know that, you have to remember this head of radius should lie anatomically upward. Then as I told you, this radial tuberosity should face medially. Then secondly, you see this here, there is slight concavity here. So this concavity should be in front, and if you see the side, the lateral side is little bit convex. So convexity should be lateral, and at the same time this styloid process, this pointed projection, it should face downward and it should be lateral in position. So if you know these 3-4 points, you can very easily fit it in your body or orient it in your body and say that it belongs to either left side or right side. So now let us come to ulna. This ulna is an endoskeleton. So type of skeleton is endoskeleton. Part of skeleton is appendicular skeleton because it is a bone of limb. Then from its shape and size, it is a long bone because it has 2 ends and a shaft. Now let us come to the systematic description of the bone or this ulna. Now let us come to the upper extremity. Here this upper extremity has got 2 processes. One, this curve process. See this curve process, this is called Olecranon process, and underneath this curve process there is articulatory surface, and this underneath this curved surface, Olecranon process, we call it greater sigmoid cavity or greater sigmoid notch. Then below this Olecranon process we have coronoid process. This is coronoid process. So 2 process, Olecranon process and coronoid process. And here there is a small articulatory surface. This is articulatory surface which articulates with the head of radius. So this is also called as lesser sigmoid notch. This articulates with the trochlea of humerus, and this greater sigmoid notch articulates with the trochlea of humerus. Now let us come down to shaft. The circumference of the shaft gradually tapers as we go down and down, and it is smallest at the lower end. Now the shaft has 3 borders. Here this shaft crest, also otherwise called as interosseous crest, represents the lateral border. The Olecranon process facing forward, anterior in position, and this is on the side, so lateral border. And here we have on the medial another border. This is medial border. And on the back side here we have another ridge. This represents posterior border. So we have again 3 surfaces. This is anterior surface, medial surface and posterior surface. Now then let us come down to the last part, that is the lower end. So lower end has 2 important features. One is this small projection. This is called styloid process. This styloid process should be medial in position. It should be medial towards the body, and this part is called head of ulna. So this articulates with radius. This. So this is how we describe ulna. Let us come to the identification of site. If you are given an ulna bone, how can you identify whether it is left or right? That's the point. Now, as I told you, these knots should be anterior in position. This interosseous crest should be lateral in position. And this styloid process medially towards the body. Olecranon process should be up. It should be superior in position. So keeping these 3 points in perfect orientation, you can easily say to which side of the body it belongs to. So this particular ulna which I am demonstrating is left ulna. So while concluding, we can say that by learning how to draw and describe human bones, we can know the anatomical position of various bones in our limbs. And at the same time, we can go for a comparative anatomy of human limb bones with the limb bones of other primates, our distant relatives, and other hominid and hominoid fossils. And as such, from such a comparative study of the structure and anatomical position of limb bones, we can go for evolutionary approach of studying the gradual changes or changes that have taken place in the skeleton system of human body.